not that I'm really here to, try to sell my book, but all these things are in this book that someone who was an intern for me at 16 in high school who loved reggae, he ended up starting a book publishing company. And he convinced me to write a book. And, some people like it who read it.
You mentioned Lion Fox Studio. Now that is something I would really love to know about.
Yeah, so Jim Fox is just a really cool person, and he had a studio in DC. So basically, what I would do is go to Jamaica with these big 24 track tapes. Back then it was all analog. So I would do my recording down in Jamaica and then add some overdubs and things and bring them back to Washington where Jim and I would mix them. And he started with a DC group, but Ross Records was bringing him so much work and he was getting a reputation for really knowing reggae. And the beautiful thing is just last week, I was in Austin, Texas with Jim mixing this new album with someone named Ray Benson. He does Western swing music where I've taken accordion, fiddle, and pedal steel and added it to reggae. And, I knew when I started the project that I wanted to mix it with Jim Fox. So the beautiful thing is 40 years later, he and I are still working together. The Lion and Fox became like the place where reggae artists like Don Carlos and people like Soulja and even Revolution, they would all want to go there, Ground Nation, and a lot of other Jamaican reggae artists, Dean Fraser, Fattis Burrell from Exterminator, and have Jim mix their records. He's very talented. I learned a lot from him.
Just like listening to, for instance, One Stone.
Yeah.
If there was anything that you could say was a perfect mix, Jim Fox did it.
Jim is cool, man. Jim is, he will search and search until he finds the sound that he wants. And then he'll just do some very subtle things to make sure the instruments are blending and nothing's drowning out something. And, I mean, again, God, it was such a joy to work with him again last week. And I've been listening back since I've gotten back to California. And I'm just very pleased, with the work we've done.
So how did you first meet Fattis Burrell?
I was at a party in Miami. There used to be a magazine called Reggae Report, and Fatis was there, and Ross Records was very young, and Fatis was just getting in the business. And, we started talking about life and about Rasta and different things. And he had just finished a Yellowman record, and it was called Yellow Like Cheese.
Ah, yeah.
It was a song. So we just like really hit it off. And I know I keep using the word family a lot, but we became family. Even now, his son and I, Kareem, they call him Remus. We
Mhm.
were really, really close in Jamaica. We were on the phone just today. I've signed a new artist in Jamaica and he co-produced the album with me. So, Fatis and I became seriously brothers. And I don't even like it when Kareem calls me uncle because I feel more like a father to him. I know I'm not his father, but that's how close we are. And Fatis and I, man, we did a lot of work together. Even the Dean Plays Bob records, where Dean Fraser does the Bob Marley, those were all out of the Dr. Dread, Ross Records, Fatis relationship. We put out the first Luciano record, and the first Sizzla record. And when you put out the first record of an artist, those artists will always respect you because no one knew them, but we had faith in their music. Once you're like a big name and a big artist, everybody wants to sign you. But when no one knows you and you put out that first album, so that was a big honor to put out the first record from Exterminator on both Luciano and Sizzla.
And it was so fascinating listening to those first albums and hearing how much they evolved over the years.
I know. And they were not getting deep into, the whole Rasta philosophy, and their music hadn't developed as much, and lyrics, and you got to start somewhere.
There's someone who I've been thinking about asking you about, Eek-A-Mouse.
Mm. Well, again, I like unique, interesting artists. I like people who do their own thing and are creative. So that's what first attracted me to Eek-A-Mouse. That was the sixth album I put out. It's crazy, but I remember like catalog numbers. So that was Ross 3006 Assassinator, which, by the way, is being reissued on Record Store Day on 4/20 coming up. This friend of mine is putting it out of St. Louis, and he's only pressing 1,000 copies. So yeah, I knew two people who had tracks with Eek-A-Mouse, put them together, put out Assassinator, and then we did some more work together. He was on the Ross Christmas album, The Night Before Christmas, and all through the house. The only one stirring was I, Eek-A-Mouse. And he's pretty zany and out there, but over time he got a little more and more out there. And we did some albums down the line. I wrote some songs for him, and lyrically, and he's still around, you know, and he's gotten into some trouble, and him and we talk occasionally, but he's not somebody I really see working with anymore. Here's one thing that I have learned is you have the artist and you have the person. And most people, they just know the artist. And sometimes when you get to know the person, you might actually have a different opinion of the artist. But some of Eek-A-Mouse's behavior, was just not really acceptable. And so, people's karma and what happens to them in life is usually of their own doing. So, sometimes you got to just let people go and, stay to your vision and live clean. And I think you'll get further. I'm going to turn 70 this year, and I'm still very active, producing records and making music. So I give thanks every day, for life, and, just try to live a clean life. So what happened is when Napster came along, remember Napster?
Yes.
And I saw young people were downloading music for free. I could see the writing on the wall that the music industry was heading for a decline. So Sanctuary had recently bought Trojan. So I had this idea that, okay, Trojan had the great reggae of the 60s and 70s, and Ross had the 80s and 90s and beginning of 2000s. So maybe Sanctuary would want to buy Ross, and then I could help run both divisions, Trojan and Ross Records. So I approached them, and they did end up buying Ross Records. And I worked there for many years, and they paid me well. to go to Jamaica and produce records, which is what I love doing. And it was a really good relationship. But then Sanctuary started losing a ton of money, and not because of Ross Records. They were, all into like rock music and all kinds of things. So eventually, Sanctuary had to sell their company before they went into bankruptcy. So they sold it to Universal Records, which ended up owning Ross and Trojan and Sanctuary. And then Universal was doing a deal to buy EMI Records, and the Justice Department said you have to divest of some of your holdings. So Universal ended up selling Sanctuary, which still included Ross and Trojan, to BMG Records. So now Ross is owned by BMG Records, basically out of the England office.
Mm.
But I've held on to my music publishing. I never sold that, so I'm very active in representing artists and their publishing, which is a whole other aspect of the music business. And the publishing company is Tafari Music. And when I started Ross, I didn't know anything about publishing, but I knew it was something. So I just started and called it Tafari Music. So, from day one early on, pretty much it was Ross Tafari, which, makes me feel good.
Digger's Factory has been putting out quite a few Ross releases. Are you connected with that, or is that BMG?
No, I'm connected with that. That my friend who works there, he worked for my French distributor for like 30 years ago. And he's a really cool person and he treats people good. And, I work with people, I don't work with companies. So, now that he's at Digger's Factory, I'm working with him and he's very respectful to me, to the artists. He does real quality pressings of these records. And I even got Fatis's son, Kareem, a deal with him, where he's put out a few records for Exterminator. So, the um the circle continues. And I really do like Digger's Factory a lot.
I'm very, very happy to see these Ross releases getting reissued because a lot of them are hard to find on vinyl.
Oh yeah, and you're going to see a lot more of them. So I basically just connected them with BMG for the Ross releases.
You did mention some of your recent work. Is there any other new projects that you're working on?
Yeah, we have a new Barrington Levy record coming out that is so incredible. It's called Love, Life, Humanity. And we're working like every song to be great. And it's produced by Handel Tucker, who's pretty brilliant and works close with Barrington. And then I've got signed a new artist named Jay Ritten, and his album is called Kaleidoscope. So I've been in Jamaica this year, well, in 2023, producing that and mixing it. And, it's got some really great songs on it. And, we're just getting ready to finish up the cover. We're trying to get him a visa to come to America and Europe and England. And he was in the Bob Marley movie. He was one of the original Wailers. And he's kind of getting a little buzz in Jamaica. And you can even go on YouTube and see some of his stuff. He's a very humble youth from Trenchtown, and a lot of the new Rasta type artists are more from uptown. But this youth is from Trenchtown and he's got a really cool vibe about him. So yeah, I'm not, working with too many people and doing too much, but what it is I'm working with is very special to me.